Hi, hello everyone. Paolo here again. And today is book number 10 out of the 52 book challenge, wherein I plan to read 52 books in a span of 1 year, or that's one book a week. And today I'm very excited to share the book of the week, which is Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. So, Jeff teaches us the Scrum method on how we could deliver more results in a shorter span of time, right? So, as usual, I have my key takeaway. So today I have four key takeaways, and it starts with what is Scrum, sprints versus waterfalls. So we'll start with that and move along as we progress, right? So the first key takeaway is what is Scrum and how is it relatable to sprints versus waterfall? So I'll start to explain the waterfall technique. So a lot of companies follow this technique wherein at the start of the project, they plan the entire end-to-end process at the very start. And then they have certain timelines that they assign to each specific task. The challenge with this is it's usually segregated, it's siloed to multiple teams that handle a project, and you can't really foresee how long it would take to finish a certain output depending on their stage and pass it along to the next step. So the challenge is a lot of companies, if they follow this technique, often than not, they're not able to stay within the timeline, stay within the budget, and so on and so forth. So Jeff has a different technique, which is Scrum. It's very relatable to sprints, wherein rather than plan out the entire project at the very start, what you do is you identify what are the different tasks that need to be done to complete the entire project, right? And once you identify the entire tasks, you need to assign weights in terms of the level of difficulty. They usually follow the Fibonacci technique, wherein the next number is the sum of the two previous numbers before it. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 13, right? So you assign, I'll discuss the step by step in after this, but the second thing is sprints are more efficient because rather than implement a project depending on their department, there seems to be a lot of information lost when transitioning from one department to the other. So the concept of sprints or Scrum is rather than separate them or organize teams depending on their function or responsibility, Scrum aims to be cross-functional, meaning you gather a group of 7 to 9 people, 5 to 9 people, wherein all of the people needed to complete the project are within the same team. So from your Scrum Master, uh, your team who does the execution, and so on and so forth, right? So it's moving away from silos, department to department, but rather a cross-functional team, all working towards the same goal. The third one is teams are autonomous, so they're free to execute quickly, agile as a team, and usually it's comprised of the Scrum team is comprised of three core components. The Scrum Master is basically the guy who keeps track whether or not the project is going as planned, whether or not the commitments that was promised at the start of the project is being delivered on time, on schedule, and if there are any blockers, right? The second one is product owner. So tendency is this product owner would be uh, um, have a great grasp in terms of the product, in terms of the technicalities of it. So he or she is in charge of the product vision, right? Having a clear understanding what is the customer's pain point and how can your solution or product help address that pain point. And finally, the third key component of a Scrum team is the team that does the actual execution. So again, Scrum is basically moving away from the waterfall technique wherein uh, you know, it's siloed, different departments are segregated, and then you simply, if department one is done doing their task, they submit it to department two without having a clear understanding of how each department work with each other. So it's more cross-functional. It's agile in a sense that they're able to adjust their key tasks and be conscious on what are the key tasks that need to be done within a span of a week, right? So the second is I'll walk you through the Scrum process. So I think it's a very powerful technique, especially if you're in product management, if you're handling a team. So I'll walk you through the Scrum process. So the first one is, of course, you need to identify who is the team that you need to fulfill a project, right? So as mentioned earlier, you have the product owner who understands the product vision, customer pain point. You pick a team who would actually do the execution, and lastly is a Scrum Master to monitor whether or not the progress is actually happening. And once you have the team, the right pieces in place, again, it's cross-functional, meaning it's not separated in terms of operations and dev. It's mixing them up, cross-functional, on all the components, all the talent that you need in one Scrum team. The second one is create and prioritize a product backlog. So what you do is you identify the product roadmap. So what are the different tasks that you need to do? So you just highlight all the different tasks that you need to do in order to complete a project or complete a product roadmap, right? And then from there, you refine and estimate it. You refine and estimate the product backlog. So what does this mean? So based on all of the things, all of the tasks, all of the milestones that you can achieve, right? You assign weights, right? So they usually use the Fibonacci technique. So the Fibonacci technique is basically assigning the sum, the next number is the sum of the two previous numbers. So it's 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 13, and so on and so forth. So basically, by using the Fibonacci technique, you're able to assign the level of difficulty depending on the task at hand. So from there, you plan, right? The sprint planning happens. It's definitely less than a month usually. It's usually 1 to 2 weeks long. This would help teams be able be to adjust, be flexible in terms of identifying what are the product backlogs, what are the project backlogs, and how can we remove the blockers, right? So you need to identify the sprint goal. For example, if your sprint duration is 1 week, you meet as a team and identify within this 1 week span of time, what do we need to accomplish, right? So for example, if you're developing a product, we need to have the user interface ready and identify what are the different things, tasks that we need to do to have a user interface ready by the end of the week, right? So it's very clear that although tasks may change, the goal must stay fixed, and it must all each stakeholder of a team needs to be aware and work on that common goal in mind. So the next one is make work visible. So you can segregate it into the things to do, the things that the team is doing currently, and the things that are done. So usually it's done in a big whiteboard, and then they have post-its. So every morning before the day even starts, the team members are able to visually see where are they lagging, where do they need help on. So the great process about this is you're working across cross-functional teams, right? So rather than a person being tasked or burdened um, by doing it himself, having a visual representation of the things that need to be done. If ever there are other team members that have experienced the same problem in the past, they can jump in right away and help accelerate the process, right? So the next one is a daily stand up, daily scrum. So usually it's done in a very fast paced manner. 15 minutes is the maximum. So this is where the scrum master ask everyone on the team, what did you do today? What was your results today? Sorry, what did you do yesterday? What did you do today? And identifying what are the blockers that are stopping you from finishing this task, right? So the rest of the team within a 15-minute time span, they voice out everything that they did, everything that they are doing, and all of the blockers. So this process helps the entire team, be aware in terms of what's happening, and if ever you can extend help to your team member. So it's a collaborative way to garner support, and in result you're able to do things faster and more efficient. The next one after that is sprint review or sprint demo. So again, at the end of the scrum duration, usually it's 1 week or 2 weeks, you need to have a minimum viable product, right? Or show a prototype. Because again, at the end of the day, it's about having those incremental wins rather than a finished good. You need to have a minimum viable product or minimum output that you agree upon at the end of each week. Because of this, it allows teams to look at the sprint retrospective. So what went right, what could have done, what could have gone better, and what can we do to make things better in the next round or in the next sprint. So again, it's focusing on a bad process rather than the fault of a person or a bad or the fault of the person, right? So it's really understanding why did it happen, right? If there are any blockers, why did it happen? Why did we miss it? In case you missed the output that you wanted to deliver by the end of the week or the end of the Scrum sprint, and what can we do to make it improve or to make it to deliver on our planned sprints, right? And lastly is, of course, following that Kaizen principle, always being in the lookout of improving. And the last thing I wanted to highlight here is really the burnout chart, right? So the burnout chart has a visual representation wherein the progress of the team, how are you doing as a team in terms of delivering um, your Scrum process, right? So again, at the very start, you have an entire list of all the tasks that you need to do. And using the Fibonacci technique, you assign weights in terms of level of difficulty. And you add them up, that's the entire um, work that you need to do. And after each sprint, you're able to determine, for example, if it starts with 160 tasks, 160 points that are comprised with multiple tasks. At the end of each scrum period, sprint period, you'll be able to deduct all of the work that is done. So having this visual representation, you're able to better estimate in terms of where are we lagging, what is the velocity of the team, meaning how much work do we actually do per sprint period. And as a Scrum Master, you're able to identify how can we accelerate this. And because of this, it gives the team better understanding in what needs to be done, how can we improve, and how can we do better, right? So it's a really amazing technique. The next one is OODA Loop. So I think it's very applicable regardless of which industry you are in. So the first one stands for observe. So in any project you want to do, in any product development you want to do, it's first observing, right? Observing what's the problem that you're trying to solve, what are the different factors impacting your current decision, maybe your external and internal aspects. So the observe is really data gathering, right? Based on the problem that you want to solve, what are the different data points that you need to do or research on to have an informed decision. The second one is orient. Orienting is basically based on the data that you gathered, what are the different options available to do, right? So you're able to orient your team, orient yourself on what are the different uh, decisions, what are the different um, pathways that we can take. And finally, based on all of the data that on hand, we identified all of the things that we can do to move forward. You need to decide, right? Make a decision out of the all options available, which do you plan to pursue, right, to solve your problem. And lastly, once deciding, it's purely about execution, effective execution, and just do it, right? And using the Scrum technique that was discussed earlier, you'll be able to break down all tasks involved in this entire project, and you'll have a visual representation in terms of how much backlog do you have. And finally, it's what I like about this is you also identify the three risks of business. So whenever you're entering into a new venture, it's really understanding the three risks of business. The first one is market risks. Do people actually want to buy what you're building, right? The challenge of a lot of startups wherein they start with the product in mind. This is completely wrong, right? Because you need to first start whether or not there is an actual pain that you want to solve. It's really about having that customer obsession, understanding what does the customer want, right? What do they need? What is the current pain point that you want to solve? The second one, once identifying that, is the technical risk, right? Do you have the capacity to actually build it? Do you have the technical resources to actually deliver on the project or the product that you want to develop? And finally, is you identify that people need it. You have the technical knowledge on how to do it or the team who can execute. Finally, is can you sell it? So there's a financial risk. So even if a person knows that he needs it, you have the technical, fix the technical issues. Can you actually say, would people actually pay? Do they have the capacity to pay? And will they actually pay to buy your product or subscribe to your service, right? So these are the three risk of business: market risk, technical risk, and financial risk. So to end, very exciting to highlight, what is Scrum. We defined Scrum as opposed to Waterfall, wherein it's a constant iteration, reviewing the process and understanding how can we move forward. It's a more effective approach rather than plan the entire thing at the very start, right? The OODA Loop, it's again the Kaizen principle: observing, orienting yourself, deciding, actually delivering, and acting upon it. The Scrum process, so I walked you through the Scrum process earlier, and finally the three risk of business. So with that, very exciting book. I hope you liked the summary. Again, this is Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time by Jeff Sutherland. If you like my summary for today, I have done, a lot of summaries as well, purely nonfiction books, and how can you, rather than read the book by yourself, I made summaries which you can review. And please like and follow my YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com, search Paulo Balinas, and hit the subscribe button to view the other videos. With that, thank you, and next week again for the next book. Salamat. Thank you.